And thanks to all the speakers that we had before. I think they've set up the stage beautifully. I mean, with Nagesh talking about real life examples of frontline workers who managed to create that last mile customer connect, which reaped huge benefits for their organizations. To the panel discussion here, where I think we came around to a consensual view about how first and foremost it's important to know who your customer is, right? Before you can plan your programs, before you can figure out how to use technology, first try and figure out who your customer is, what they like, where they shop, why don't they shop with you, right? And then you can kind of build loyalty programs, build promotions on top of that knowledge. So here we'll try and take you through how do you really build that customer intelligence, right? How do you kind of, as an organization that is looking to invest in technology to do this, how do you kind of think through investing in customer intelligence? And therefore build a future-proof tech stack that can enable your marketing use cases. So, just a brief introduction. So I'm Vikram Bhat. I head product at Capillary. I've been at Capillary for about 8 months now, but prior to that, I was primarily in the retail and e-commerce domains. So I was VP of product at Myntra during its growth phase from 2011 to 2014. And then I was Chief Product Officer at ABOF, which is Aditya Birla Online Fashion, where I interacted with Praveen. So we tried to do something differently for one of the brands at Aditya Birla. And here I am at Capillary, and my colleague here, Gaurav, he looks after B2B and CPG use cases. So again, as you saw in the panel discussion, irrespective of whether you're B2C or B2B, really understanding your customer across channels, across interactions is hugely important. With that introduction, we'll get started. So how to build a future-proof tech stack, right? I mean, obviously technology keeps changing, the consumers keep changing, but how do you architect a future-proof tech stack, right? So let's start with, first of all, who is our consumer today, right? And what are their characteristics? So as, Nagesh pointed out, as Unikrishnan pointed out, the consumer is ever evolving, right? So one of the key things we see today is, even though a lot of commerce still happens in stores, so I think Mr. Nagesh pointed out that just 2% of commerce outside of consumer durables happens online, right? So most of it still happens in the store. But even though it happens in the store, 82% of shoppers globally have started using mobile phones in store, right? And this is not just for chatting with their friends. Of course, even chatting has a shopping component. For example, it's very well known that people share pictures on WhatsApp while they're shopping and get feedback from their friends. And in fact, I think Flipkart tried to build a feature around this a while back, which didn't do so well because nobody's going to do it outside of WhatsApp, right? I mean, everybody's extremely familiar with WhatsApp, and a use case like that would really work there. We have over 300 million social media users in the country today. Right, astonishing. I mean, again, when I say social media, it's not just Instagram, it's also WhatsApp, it's also ShareChat and so on. But you still have 330 million social media users today, right? So definitely a channel that you want to kind of spread awareness about your brand. And 86% of consumers use at least 2 channels before they shop. Again, this is a global figure. In India, it's likely to be lower. But 86% of consumers globally use multiple channels before they shop, right? Now, another thing I wanted to point out was, I think, one of the speakers pointed out earlier, I think it was Unikrishnan who pointed out earlier, that while there is a lot of concern about privacy, if consumers know they're going to get a benefit at the end of the transaction, if they know that they're going to be recognized, if they know they're going to be, the offers they receive, the products that are recommended to them are relevant at that point in time, right? So I've just bought a shoe. I don't want to be bombarded by that shoe in every site I visit. But if, let's say I've just bought a shoe, now you're able to suggest, something else that would go along with the shoe. Let's say, I've bought, gym clothes. Now I need a gym shoe. Now at that point, are you able to recommend the right gym shoe for me, right? If you're able to do that, close to 50% of consumers are actually okay sharing their information. I mean, and just look at behavior of millennials and Gen Z today, right? They feel completely free sharing all the information, all their private information on social media sites. To which, I mean, and they don't even know who's, viewing those accounts. So a lot of people are okay sharing their information if they're getting something at the end of it, right? Something that's relevant and highly personalized. Now, given the omni-channel or multi-channel behavior that we're seeing, it is no surprise that people who are on 2 or more channels before they shop, they actually spend 10 to 30% more than your average shopper. And of course, the figure shoots up when you look at loyal customers, but even if you just look at omni-channel shoppers who are not loyal, they end up spending a lot more. Probably because they're a lot more aware of what they're purchasing, they're a lot more confident about what they're purchasing, and therefore they're willing to spend a lot more money on what they want to, what they're interested in. So again, this is great, right? So we know that a lot of brands are engaging their customers on multiple channels. And these customers, when they interact on these multiple channels, they're generating a lot of data for the brands. But are all the brands that have access to the data, are they effectively using that data? So for example, you can see a lot of different data other than just transaction data is now being generated across channels. So obviously your website and mobile app gives you a good indication of what they're browsing, what they're likely to be interested in, and so on. You have customer service interactions, which kind of give you a sense of what they're sensitive about, what are the most important criteria in a transaction for each consumer. You have promotion and campaign response, which gives you a lot of information about what offers get clicked on, what offers get responded to, right? You have channel and store preference information based on where people shop or where they browse. But does all this data come together seamlessly to create one picture of the customer? And to add to this, as Mr. Nagesh and other speakers pointed out, depending on who you're with, your persona is likely to change. So it's not just one persona, right? It also depends on the occasion. It depends on when you're shopping, who you're shopping with, right? Are you able to create a single story for each consumer who is shopping with you today? And the reality is a lot of this data lies in silos, right? So you have customer service organizations which have a lot of valuable customer service data. You have e-commerce departments which have a lot of valuable e-commerce or online or app data. You have your regular marketing teams which have a lot of valuable campaign data. But we haven't seen too many people really string a story together and create a journey for their consumers across channels. And this is what Mr. Nagesh was also referring to as journey analytics, right? That whole area of journey analytics, which is based on what they're doing across channels, what are they likely to do next? Which offer are they likely to respond to next? Which product are they likely to buy next? Predictive analytics around this is becoming really key to generating that next level of alpha. So we all know that once we get this data, we need to use it to really personalize the experience for each customer. And if we don't personalize, I'll have to stand in the center here. Otherwise the cameraman is going to feel jobless. But going back, so if we don't do personalization right, what do brands stand to lose? So here you have some statistics that, in a recent survey, more than 80% of customers are likely to buy if their offer or recommendation is personalized. Now, if it's not personalized, right, if I keep going back to the store and keeps recommending the same products over and over again, which I've rejected already, more than 50% of customers are likely to switch to another brand, right? So there's heavy penalty in not personalizing your interaction with a customer. And this applies even more in B2B, right, which is highly relationship based. At least in B2C, you can get away with, I've got too many consumers, I don't really know them. But in B2B, you just can't get away with that excuse, right? The scale is a lot lower and the penalty is a lot higher if you don't personalize your experience with your end consumer. Now, that brings us to the whole topic of the consumer data platform, right? And while we call this the consumer data platform, it's really a platform that can capture the interactions of all your partners in your distribution chain, right? In the case of B2B, you may have multiple levels in that chain. In the case of B2C, it's typically just one level. Of course, you may still have influencers in the store who are hugely responsible for driving conversion in the last mile. But we are really talking about end consumer in B2C. And in the case of B2B, it's really your entire distribution chain. So again, what is the CDP, right? What really sets a CDP apart? I mean, you may have heard a lot of terms these days, DMP, CDP, CRM, data warehouse. Are these all the same? Are these different, right? To us, it doesn't really matter. I mean, forget about what you've heard, right? What we're really saying is, in order to understand your customer, in order to create that one story across channels, across interactions for your customer, you need to get that data together in one place, right? So, and that place where you gather your customer data is really the CDP. And what sets it apart is the ease of connecting it to multiple different channels. So the channels can be offline transactions. It can be your online commerce website, or maybe just your brand website. It could be the social channels where you have a lot of content. It could be even third-party sites, right, where you have ads or where you engage with your customer. And there are also, in addition to places where you engage with your customer, there are also third-party data sources today where you can actually get data that enhances the behavioral or psychographic data of your consumers. And that is hugely useful. We'll get to that in a bit. So you get all that data very easily in one place. Again, what differentiates a CDP from any other data warehouse? The ease of getting the data in, right? In the case of a data warehouse, every time you add a new data source, it will probably take you months to get that operational. In the case of a CDP, you should be able to just turn on a switch and get that data in to your data platform. Now, once you get that data in, are you able to kind of cleanse the data and create that golden record for each customer, which can then be used in multiple different use cases? I think a lot of people suggested that customer service associates or retail associates can be armed with this data so that whenever a customer comes and asks them a question, they are not only able to convert that customer, but in the end, just think about it, right? They can feel good about themselves, right? In the end, when a customer comes to you and you're supposed to be the expert in the store and you don't know, you don't have a good response to the customer, you're going to feel really bad about it, right? Each retail associate, they will be feeling pretty bad about themselves, right? But of course, there are practical issues as to why not every retail associate can be, the best retail associate ever. I mean, attrition, training issues, and so on. But can you arm them with the information which can make them come across as really intelligent in front of the customer? And hopefully increase the trust of the customer in your brand, right? So a single view of the customer, that's the final output. But to get there, you obviously need a lot of cleansing, deduping capabilities within the customer data platform. So essentially what we're talking about is a single infrastructure to capture all the interaction data that's being generated by your customers across channels, right? So that comes into the customer data platform. You're able to build extremely insightful insights, powered by AI and ML on top of that customer data. And then you're able to feed those insights to engagement tools. Now, engagement tools can be multiple. It can be your ad tool. It can be your ad tech tool. It can be your CRM tool. It could be your campaign tool. It could be a loyalty tool. But are you able to, create microsegments and feed it directly to these engagement tools? That's when you really realize the power of a consumer data platform. Of course, in the end, what do you achieve from all this? The metrics you would be most interested in, which is conversion, average basket size, value, repeat purchase, customer lifetime value. So this is what you would want to impact by having that consumer data ready and in use for you. So essentially, if you look at the use cases of a CDP, right, okay, that's great. CDP is where I collect all my data together. But what can I do on top of that data? So to us, we really think of it in terms of 4 dimensions, right? Starting with the basic, which is, just your regular hygiene reporting. Can I generate, day-to-day insights using this data? Or do I need to get that data to another place to get those insights? No, you should be able to generate those insights. Your day-to-day standard business KPIs, you should be able to track them on top of the customer data platform. Can I target customers using this information? And again, we're just talking about basic transactional information. What did they buy last time? How many times have they visited me? How valuable are they to me? Just on the basis of this data, you should be able to target them using simple campaigns and promotions. Now, can you go a step forward? Can you start predicting what customers are likely to respond to? When a new customer walks into the store and you just have basic information about that customer, maybe that customer has just bought 3 or 4 products, but based on which other customers have bought similar products and based on their behavioral profile, based on their psychographic profile, can you start cross-selling and upselling even with very few purchases, right? That's what a CDP should really be able to do, right? Because the first 2 things, the first 2 use cases can be done by pretty much any data warehouse, right? Any reporting infrastructure can kind of give you that capability. But can you get into advanced segmentation and personalization, which starts getting predictive, right? A CDP should definitely be able to support that at scale. And finally, can I create that single view of customers which I can expose to multiple applications? So not just applications that the CDP is tightly integrated to, but can I really expose that data to almost any customer-facing application that needs that data? Right? So for example, I mean, Capillary does not have applications around customer service, but can you pull data from the Capillary CDP and expose that to your customer service application? Provide a 360-degree view to your customer service associates. It should definitely be able to do that. So it's not a black box, it's not a walled garden, but it's really a repository of up-to-date, real-time, accurate customer data, which you can then expose to multiple different customer-facing applications. So this is just to summarize, all the things that you can do with the CDP. You can collect and unify, enrich customer data from across sources. You can get one view of the customer after doing enough data cleansing and deduping. And as one of the speakers pointed out, deduping just doesn't mean, okay, I have two people with the same phone number. But it's really getting down to the behavior. Are two people, maybe they have different phone numbers, but are they buying very similar categories? Are they shopping, with very similar characteristics? So are they potential duplicates? So you should be able to catch that and do something about it. And finally, when you get into the outbound use cases, can I really get to that n is equal to 1, which Unikrishnan was talking about, you should be able to get there. It's no point talking about a marketing funnel or segments today, because that is 80s, 90s technology. With today's technology, if you can't get to n is equal to 1, then honestly, it is not the right technology that you're evaluating. And finally, I think I would say the end state, at least the current end state of most MarTech platforms, is to really predict what the customer is likely to do next, and therefore what the marketeer should do next, right? And of course, added to that, the marketeer should also be able to get back insights about why they're being asked to do that action next, right? It's not just enough if the AI tells you, send this promotion tomorrow. But you should get some insights into why that AI is telling you, why that promotion will work tomorrow. So now we'll come to some quick use cases of the CDP, at least the kind of use cases that Capillary supports today. So the first thing is, real-time business insights. As I said, your mainstream reporting use cases. Can I, go to my management and talk about how the CLTV has changed? Can I talk about how repeat purchase rates have changed? I've just run a campaign. What's the conversion? Why is the conversion where it is? Can I explain that? Right? So that's the primary use case of the CDP. But beyond that, going beyond that, how do I really communicate to my customer, as a segment of one? So in the communication that I send out, can I really personalize the messaging using the underlying data? So for example, here we have two sets of panels here. One panel says without campaign personalization, the other says with campaign personalization. And here we try and talk about what you can do with campaign personalization, right? So for example, one of the simplest use cases of campaign personalization is, for example, I don't check my SMSs till evening, right? I see the notifications, but if the notification is not important, I don't check my SMSs till evening, right? Now, if a brand knows that I don't check my SMSs till evening, can they send me effective communication by targeting me after 6 p.m., right? If they knew that, they could, right? And they would also have the ability to send messages at different times. Can they recommend the right products, right? So as I think Mr. Nagesh pointed out, or somebody else pointed out, it's a very common experience for somebody today to go and browse one product and then get bombarded with that product on every site they visit, right? Now, if I've already bought that product, that's going to be the most irritating experience for me, from a brand, and I'll probably never shop with that brand again, right? So how can I predict that? So how can I get information about what products have been purchased, what products have been browsed, and based on a sense of product life cycle, how can I ensure that the user's not bombarded with products that they're not interested in, right? And similarly, based on either their own purchase history or based on lookalike audiences, can I target them with the right product each time, right? And here, we have enough stats. So for example, we have stats from a shoe retailer where with personalized product communication, the conversion went up by about 80%, right? So I think that is extremely key, being able to personalize the product that the user wants to see, as opposed to sending some generic category level communication. Finally, which stores do customers stop in, right? Shop in, sorry. Now, by the way, during a conversation I had earlier, somebody said, yeah, do you base it on the proximity of the user to the shop? Yes, proximity is definitely one variable, but it's not just proximity. For example, even if a store is nearby my house, if another store is on my way from work to home, I'll probably shop there, right? Now, so it's not just proximity, but it's also behavior. Where do I typically shop? Which stores do I visit more frequently? And again, the stores that I visit could change based on which day of the week it is. So during the week, when I'm driving back from work, it may be one store. During the weekend, when I go shopping with my family, it could be another store, right? So based on when the campaign is being triggered, can I target the right store in my communication? And of course, finally, I have 20 or 30 offers, right, that I want to kind of expose to my audience, or maybe it's even more. Which offer do I choose for which customer, right? And that's extremely important. For example, for some, it may be about, they may be a discount seeker, so you may want to target them with discounts. Whereas some other customers may be trend seekers. They may be, into fashion trends, and they may want to be at the, top of their game, right, when it comes to fashion sense. And so the messaging and the offer that you send out to these two customers would be very different based on their characteristics. So to one, it would be discount based. To the other, it may be, the fact that they have an exclusive preview made available to them. And so we already talked about this, but how does one view of the customer really help you sell more, right? So we had a lot of speakers today talk about how to bring the power back to the store, right? And one key point that everybody touched upon was, can we arm store associates with accurate, up-to-date information about their customers, and also what their customers are likely to buy, so that they can actually drive last-mile conversion in the store. And I just want to add one point here. I think we talked about that use case enough, but one of the anecdotes we have from one of our customers is that this is unlikely to work until the store staff feel committed to drive this kind of conversion in the store. And how do you make that happen? Again, this customer of ours used incentivization and gamification to make it work, right? So because without that, yeah, you could train your store staff all you want, but as long as they know that there is no accountability, you will always have maybe 5 to 10% who go out of their way to help the customers. But if you put incentivization and gamification frameworks in place, you can actually make this part of their regular workflow. Right? So if you know that you're going to be evaluated at the end of the day by a store manager, and if you know that you're competing against your other store associates to achieve a certain target, and if you know this is going to allow you to earn a little more than your regular salary, then no doubt you will be interested in helping customers with more information, right? And you see this already. You have digital players like Ola, Swiggy, and so on use this kind of incentivization extremely effectively, right? And what we do is we kind of provide you those frameworks to help you try and drive those gamification frameworks within your stores. And finally, as a lot of participants here talked about, when you try and personalize at the scale of 1 million customers or more, you can't really do that, with just manual analysis, right? In fact, the whole advantage of AI and ML is it throws up patterns that you normally would not have even thought of, right? So, for example, if you were to come and, if you were asked to name 10 factors that would drive a purchase, you may have trouble coming up with 10, but yeah, you will eventually get there. But with AI, it could throw up hundreds of factors, right? Factors that you couldn't even thought of, right? And again, given that you're capturing so much data and unifying it into one customer data platform, you then let AI and ML do the rest of the work for you in coming up with factors, coming up with attributes that you would never have thought of, and using that to drive extreme personalization. And finally, one of the key challenges today is the fact that customers are on multiple channels. It's not just one channel anymore. I think Unikrishnan was pointing out that we've moved from multi-channel to omni-channel. Multi-channel means I'm in a different channel, Gaurav is in a different channel, somebody else is on a different channel, right? I'm on Facebook, Gaurav is probably on Instagram, and somebody else is on SMS. It's all fine and good, right? I mean, you can just track me on Facebook, you can track him on Instagram, you can track somebody else on SMS. But now when you have this multi-channel or omni-channel behavior, where maybe I look at an SMS message, I go to the website, I browse a little more about the product, then maybe I go to an aggregator website to see if I get a better price, and then maybe I figure out that, no, I need good service around this, so I'm going to walk into the store, right? How do you kind of really capture these interactions across channels and then figure out not just which channel to target me on, but when, right? So for example, if I haven't yet seen the message on SMS, then there's probably no point targeting me on Facebook, right? Because my behavior is, the trigger is SMS, right? So how do you really get to that level where you figure out not just which channel consumers are on, but which channels they're using in what sequence, right? And what is the kind of decision they're arriving at after their interaction on each channel. That's extremely important to understand to drive effective campaigns across different channels. And this again you can't do without the data from each of these channels and the data of what customers are doing on each of these channels. So that's really the nutshell of why people should really be thinking about investing in a CDP and the kind of factors they should be thinking about when investing in a CDP. Now for a lot of customers, I mean this last slide, there's a very specific reason we put it out there. For a lot of our customers, a key question in their mind is, should I build one? Should I buy one? Right? And a lot of brands, customers think of building a CDP because 2-3 reasons, right? I mean, this is customer data. It's extremely confidential, and if leaked, it could be a serious. There could be a serious loss of trust. It could go to competitors' hands. So there's definitely security, privacy issues involved. Secondly, it is also a source of competitive differentiation, right? So everybody wants to build their competence on top of customer data, on top of customer intelligence, right? Thirdly, this is really the one single underlying infrastructure which can tie together a lot of different customer service applications. So again, it's deemed as extremely critical infrastructure, right? And I agree with all those points, right? But still, when you're looking at investing in a CDP, you really have to think about some other points. Firstly, if you're investing in a CDP platform, there are huge advantages that come with it, right? Because the work done for one integration is reusable across multiple customers, right? So for example, let's say I bring in a new data source or I integrate to a new ERP system. That same integration can be leveraged by all customers, like bringing down the time to market as well as the cost of implementing that significantly for each customer. Secondly, this whole aspect of security and privacy, it is a double-edged sword if you think about it, right? So just imagine if you are a company that has 50 to 100 IT staff who are spread across different areas. It is a complicated task to really keep track of all the privacy regulations, keep track of all the compliance regulations, and try and ensure that your infrastructure is compliant and well regulated, right? So you would much rather invest in an industry-leading platform which really needs to think through this for hundreds of customers. And finally, the ability to scale the platform, right? Again, your customer data platform may work well with a few thousand records, but when you scale up to millions, and when you want to do personalization at the scale of one, you're again talking about a huge amount of investment you have to make in the infrastructure and the underlying technologies that you build on top of the infrastructure. For example, we spend a huge amount of our time in figuring out how to scale, right? Even though we may be supporting a few million transactions, we're thinking about, will this platform scale with 1 billion transactions, right? Today, you have the California Consumer Protection Act, which requires every consumer to know what all data has been captured, and they also need to have the ability to request any of that data to be removed, right? Again, for each brand or each organization to kind of build this kind of infrastructure is honestly crazy, right? So again, you need to kind of keep some of these things in mind when you think of investing in a customer data platform. And finally, if nothing, what some of these off-the-shelf consumer data platforms allow you to do is get started on the journey, figure out your pace, And then, of course, you can in parallel figure out whether you want to invest in building your own consumer data platform. So that's basically what I wanted to cover around the consumer data platform. And Gaurav, if you can address maybe a couple of use cases which are very specific to B2B CPG, which where you've seen customers using the CDP, that'd be great.
Thanks, Vikram. So when we talk about the manufacturing and consumer goods vertical, and we look at distribution channel, so when we have been looking at how consumers are evolving, what we really need to also see is your channel partners are no different. They are the same set of consumers. For you, they might be a retailer, a dealer, but at the same time, he is also a consumer of 100 different things, 100 different products. So a lot of these scenarios and evolution that we are seeing on the consumer side are equally applicable to channel partners. And a couple of interesting use cases that I would want to come up with, or rather tell you about, is first thing is engaging on the social media channels, right? Today, a lot of brands, a lot of companies are doing branding activities, in-store branding, a lot of events, training and certifications where you would get your channel partners, make them do certain activities, they would click pictures. A very simple thing to do is ask them to start uploading those pictures with a hashtag or tagging your Facebook or Insta account. And then you start tracking those activities of who are the users who are uploading, when they are uploading, what channels they are using. And you get a lot of engagement being generated on, all these things on social media, which you can incentivize, you can put certain rewards, you can put, the most liked picture or the most shared pictures, get certain awards. So there's a lot of social engagement and social, visibility that can be built using your channel partners. Second thing that can really help is, I think Rohit mentioned, is in terms of how much data that you can really generate with these guys and use it to personalize and meet your business objectives. So again, looking at your channel partners, looking at your dealers or influencers, people like your painters, carpenters, plumbers, mechanic, even these guys are online, they are using mobile apps, they are on social media. So there's a lot of content they are consuming. Are they looking at new product? Are they looking at industry best practices? Are they trying to read about safety guidelines? There's a lot of stuff that brands push in their loyalty apps, which is around product content, about new products. So a lot of these contents can also, or the content consumption and the content sharing can also be used to understand what is the user persona, who are these people who are digitally active, who are most probable to become your brand promoters, to be effectively able to target these guys in the way they want, and giving them the right information in a very personalized manner can be very effective to even leverage your channel partners, make them your brand advocates, and take your business and engagement to the next level.
Thanks, Gaurav. So again, just to summarize, I think what we are talking about here is not that end-mind personal touch that Nagesh and some of the other speakers were talking about, but it's really the tooling that can help provide that end-user personal touch. So if your store associates, if your business development associates, if your sales folks are armed with this 360 view of consumer data, which is at their fingertips when they need it, I think organizations will go a long way in providing that additional level of customer experience and customer.